In today's video, we're taking a very in-depth and comprehensive look at the 2020 NHL Free Agent class. We're going to break this down by position, take a look at who's available, and give you some predictions on where some of these top players might end up. We'll get into that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a very in-depth look at the 2020 NHL Free Agent class. Now, I realize we don't exactly know yet when exactly free agency is going to take place. When will it officially be the offseason? But while we wait, I thought it'd be fun to take a look at a very in-depth look here at the 2020 Free Agent class. So we've broken this down by position to take a closer look at. I did a video like this about this time last year as well, heading into the summertime, breaking it down, looking at all the top players by goaltenders, defense, centers, and wingers, and who's available in free agency and where might they go. So let's jump in here and get started with the goaltenders. Now, first of all, let's get started with the starting goaltenders. We've broken this down into starters and backups. Now, with the starting goaltenders, I have listed here now. Obviously, some of these guys may not end up being a starter, but they've started enough games here recently that depending on where they end up, they very well could be starters again. But obviously, the top names on this list is Jacob Markstrom of the Vancouver Canucks, Robin Leonard of the Vegas Golden Knights, and Braden Holtby of the Washington Capitals. Now, clearly, these three guys are not only starting goaltenders, but they're top-notch starting goaltenders. Markstrom meant everything to the Canucks, and I really do think it's imperative they get him re-signed. They don't have anybody that's really ready to take over the starting role, but they do have some very solid goaltending depth within the organization, but nobody that's ready to step up yet. So Markstrom hopefully remains with the Canucks for their sake, but he's likely looking at a 3 to 4 year deal around $6 million would be my guess. Robin Leonard, hard to say where he ends up. I don't see him staying in Vegas. They're not going to be able to afford him. He's going to be looking for a longer term deal, and Robin Leonard has earned that long term deal, so I'm not sure where he goes. I know Carolina has had a ton of interest in him over the last year or two, and he hasn't ended up there just yet, so maybe they make some changes in goal and end up with the Hurricanes. That would not be a big shocker. Braden Holtby is likely going to be done with the Capitals. They're not going to be able to afford to keep him in the fold. Samsonov has certainly played well enough to take over. So another interesting top-notch goalie is going to be looking probably for his last big contract if he can get it. Clearly, Holtby is in a position where he can still start and still put up great numbers. So I'm not sure where he's going to end up, but clearly a very interesting free agent to watch. You get Corey Crawford in Chicago, very well could re-sign there. It's a strong possibility for sure. Obviously, with Leonard being dealt, Crawford's the only other goalie in the mix unless they go to free agency and go a whole different route here. But I would suspect that they likely keep Crawford around. Brian Elliott still played up decent numbers with the Flyers, but didn't have a great year. Clearly, that's Carter Hart's net in Philadelphia. He's not going to be able to be a starting goaltender there. Yeah, he either remains with the Flyers or likely ends up in a situation at best being a 1A, 1B, but more likely ends up as a backup. Mike Smith with the Oilers is another interesting guy. Played well for Edmonton this year, but another situation with the cap. Not sure they're going to be able to afford to bring him back with the contract that Koskinen has. He likely gets the starting net, and Mike Smith likely either possibly retires or likely keeps playing with another NHL team. Hard to say, but these are your top goalies on the market in free agency for 2020. There are certainly some interesting backup goalies going to be in the free agent market as well. Some of these guys very well could re-sign where they're at right now, but we might very well see that some of them change teams. I mean, you got Anton KHUDOBIN with the Dallas Stars, who's been very solid since he's arrived in Dallas. You got JARO HALAK in Boston, who's been really a godsend to a guy like Tuukka Rask, who's been able to get more rest, and his play's been more effective as well. So HALAK in Boston's been huge. You got Cam Talbot in Calgary. Certainly, fair to say he resurrected his career, had a better year last year. He's certainly going to be able to get another contract somewhere, and Calgary might not be able to retain him. Aaron Dell in San Jose has had his fair share of struggles. Hard to say where he ends up, but I don't see him going back to San Jose. They need to change up their goaltending situation. Jimmy Howard, could he possibly end up retiring? Had an atrocious year with the Red Wings, but the whole team did. You can't put all that on him. Actually, I think he might have been better than the stats looked at times for sure. You get Craig Anderson in Ottawa, another guy. Hard to say if he keeps playing or not. Seemed to have some desire when you listen to interviews near the end of the season, but at the same time, is he going to get an opportunity? I think Ottawa's going to want to go in a younger direction. They have some good young prospects prospect guys like Hogberg, for example, who played well through the parts of 1920 that he had a chance to. So debatable if Anderson comes back. Same with Ryan Miller in Anaheim, another guy who very well might have played his last NHL game as well. So these final three here between Howard, Anderson, and Miller wouldn't be shocking if any or all of them did not return to the NHL for the coming year. But the top ones we mentioned here, certainly the most interesting, could end up sticking around, especially HUDOBIN and HALAK, two of the better backup goalies around the NHL. Certainly going to be in the highest demand and probably get the biggest salaries amongst all the different backup goalie options. Let's jump over and take a look at defensemen and get started first off with top pair defensemen. There's only a few of these guys going to be on the market. Some of these guys very well could re-sign where they're at, but I guess we'll see. But we have Alex Pietrangelo of the Blues, TOREY KRUG of the Bruins, and Tyson Barrie of the Maple Leafs. Now, of course, Blues captain Alex Pietrangelo might be in tough to remain with the Blues. It's going to be hard for them to re-sign him, but at the same time, because of the cap being flat or possibly even decreasing, it's going to be tough for other teams to really open up the vault and give him a big offer. So that very well might keep the Blues captain in St. Louis, possibly on a shorter-term contract to see if revenues rebound, and maybe he can get one more deal after that. Hard to say. Same with TOREY KRUG in Boston. I know they'd like to keep him. He's a big part of their offense, but certainly going to be getting some offers from other teams. I certainly see teams like maybe like Detroit, for example, who are rebuilding, looking to bring in a guy like Krug. That's a possibility. Not to say that he would go there, but he is a Michigan-born player. Certainly would have some interest if he did leave Boston. They would have some more flexibility. Tyson Barrie almost certainly will not be returning to the Maple Leafs. It's debatable where he goes. I know there was a lot of interest from the Canucks prior, but again, they're probably not going to have the space to sign him either. So not really sure exactly where Tyson Barrie does end up, but I think it's safe to say that it will not be with the Toronto Maple Leafs for sure. That it's not worked out and they're not going to have the space to get it done. The next line of defense, the next tier, I guess, would include guys like Justin Schultz from the Penguins, Chris Tanev of the Canucks, and Sami Vatanen of the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, Vatanen never technically played for the Hurricanes. He was rehabbing an injury when he was traded, and of course never got back into the lineup before this season was suspended. Same thing with Schultz and Tanev. I'm not really sure if they're going to be able to return to where they were. The Canucks and Penguins have their own salary cap issues. I think Schultz is going to be probably looking at a short-term deal, in my opinion. He certainly has had his moments in the past when he's been very solid, put up 40, 50 points, pretty solid offensively, but the last little while he's battled injuries, numbers have been down, so I do think he's played his last game as a Penguin, or at least assuming that if the season doesn't return, he has. Either way, he doesn't come back next year, in my opinion. Tanev is debatable in Vancouver, and Vatanen, same thing with Carolina. They very well could all find themselves on the move next year. Now, continuing on with guys that kind of fall into that next tier, guys who can be second pair guys, and have more effective roles than some of the other defensemen on the market, would include St. Louis Blues defenseman Marco Scandella. Of course, he's bounced around a lot, played for 3 teams this year, started in Buffalo, went to Montreal, then off to St. Louis. Wouldn't be shocking to see him return to Montreal, but I know the Blues were happy with him as well, but I'm not sure the Blues are going to be able to afford to keep him, so that's an interesting situation to watch. You get Brendan Dillon in Washington, fit nicely. I can see them keeping him, and obviously that'll impact other defensemen on the team, but Dillon I could see staying. Cody Ceci almost definitely leaves Toronto. That experiment has not really worked out. Obviously they took that contract on to move on from Nikita Zaitsev, but Cody Ceci really doesn't fit into the Leafs' plans longer term. You get a couple of Flames defenders, including TJ Brodie and Travis Hamonic. Both been speculated a lot about their futures in Calgary. I can see one of them coming back, but probably not both. Both of them will certainly get a fair bit of attention on the market. They both serve their purpose. Not really clear. I think maybe Hamonic might be the more likely one to return. You get Zdeno Chara in Boston, and really he's either going to sign another deal with the Bruins or retire, and I don't see him hanging him up just yet. But yes, you never know. We'll haven't really heard from Chara on his future plans, but as of right now, more likely he plays another year for the Bruins. You get Joel Edmondson in Carolina as well. Of course, played for the defending Cup champion Blues last year. Was more of a bottom pair guy. Certainly hasn't really been a great fit in Carolina. It's hard to say where he goes, but it's certainly a guy like him. He's got big size. He will definitely get a contract somewhere, but not quite clear exactly where he'll end up. Now let's take a look at the center ice position. There's not really a lot here to look at. It's probably the weakest position of all the ones we're going to look at today. Led by Derek Brassard of the Islanders, probably the most productive center on this list. But most of these guys are going to be bottom 6 centers. Derek Brassard might be able to be a number 2 center on some teams, but mostly going to be a number 3, considering the fact that they get a big deal coming up for Matthew Barzal in Long Island, plus they traded for and signed to a big-time contract to Jean-Gabriel Pageau. I'm not sure that Brassard can really remain there. I guess if they want him to play wing, maybe, but either way, as much as they probably would be interested, I don't see it working out for him to remain with the Islanders, but he will land somewheres. He will get a fair bit of attention. Probably looking at maybe a $3 million deal on a 2 or 3 year contract, likely where he's looking. You get Erik Haula with Florida, of course, landed there late in the year after being traded for that Trocheck trade. So Haula could stay with Florida. Debatable, really. I know Florida looks like to be cutting some payroll, making some changes. Not sure if he fits in there. You get Brian Boyle as well. Boyle could retire. I'm not sure if he'll keep playing or not. He's had his fair share of health battles in the last few years. Been playing on 1 year contracts. Not sure what his future holds. You had Cody Eakin in Winnipeg. I mean, I think they'll likely try to keep him. Of course, he's from the area, was traded from Vegas. I think the Jets will try really hard to keep Cody Eakin. They really need to keep some center icemen in the mix there. You get Jason Spezza in Toronto. I can see him probably re-signing for another, short-term, cheaper contract. Maybe $800,000-900,000, but we'll see what the Leafs' plans are. I can see them being interested, though. You get Melko Karlsson in San Jose as well as Joe Thornton. These guys are going to get some decent contracts. Joe Thornton will probably get another 1 year deal, but will he want to do it in San Jose is a big question. We all heard the remarks he made near the trade deadline. He was disappointed that he didn't get traded and wasn't going to get an opportunity to play for a Stanley Cup with another team since the Sharks were far out of the playoff equation. And will he sign that 1 year deal somewhere else and take a run for it for an entire year? It's certainly up for debate. Or does he play in San Jose, and if they're not any better, then get traded or try to get traded again at the deadline? Hard to say what his plans are, but certainly Thornton has made it clear he continues to want to play. You had Carl Soderberg in Colorado. I'm not sure what he's going to end up with. It certainly wasn't a great year for him in Colorado. You got Mikko Koivu in Minnesota. Word is he's likely retiring, but could sign a short-term contract, but I don't see it happening. I think Koivu's at the end here. And you get some fourth-line guys like Derek Grant, Riley Sheahan, and Nate Thompson. Of course, very well could end up bouncing around a little bit here. Thompson could go back to Montreal. Sheahan very well stays with the Oilers, I think. Quite a possibility. But either way, unfortunately, not much on the market in terms of center icemen for the 2020 free agent class. Jump over and take a look at the wingers. We're going to kick things off with the top 6 wingers, which is not very many, but Taylor Hall leads the way of the Arizona Coyotes. I know that they will make a strong push to re-sign him, but they certainly have their fair share of issues. I mean, they were falling out of the playoffs. They were not there when the season was suspended. They fell down in the standings after his arrival. I know he's got wants to win a Stanley Cup, wants to be a year after year competitive team that he wants to play for, but there's got to be something more to it here. The Taylor Hall keeps going to these teams and they get worse after his arrival. I mean, New Jersey, look what happened there. He had one solid year and then kind of fell off, and then Arizona, same thing. Edmonton, things didn't work out. So I'm not really sure what's going on, what seems to be following him around, but he made it clear he wants to sign with a team where he can be a competitive player and team year after year. I'm just not sure that Arizona's going to cut that for him, and they do have that pending investigation hanging over them for the draft, the way they're testing, or allegedly testing, I should say, draft eligible players, and that could impose some financial penalties on them, which could impact what they can spend in free agency as well. But I do think they'll make a strong push. Not sure they're going to be able to keep him though. I'm not sure he was completely sold on remaining there long term. One team that I think would make a great choice for him, they have some space and can make it work, would be the Avalanche. I can see Taylor Hall going to Colorado. If I had to make a prediction, just based on gut feeling, that's where I say he ends up this offseason. But I guess we'll see. Love to know what you think down below as well. Of course, you got Tyler Toffoli in Vancouver. He was an excellent fit after arriving at the deadline, but can they afford to keep him? It's going to depend on what they work out for a contract when they negotiate. But, Toffoli, he's going to be on the market here as a pretty solid player. He's certainly resurrected his career, I think. Had a pretty good year in LA, played solid in Vancouver. The Canucks may not be able to keep him, but I know they will make a strong push to do so. And then we get the two guys in Florida with Mike Hoffman and Evgeny Dodonov. And really, I'm not really sure what Florida's plans are. Last year, we knew they were going to be big-time spenders. This year, it seems like they're going to be big-time payroll cutters, and ownership seems to be trying to cut things down here. So I don't know where things are heading to Florida, but I would say that at least one of these guys likely moves on, and it's probably difficult to say exactly where they end up right now, but I don't see both of them returning to the Panthers next year. Let's take a look at some of these guys you classify as middle six wingers. They're not legitimate top six options all the time. It could be on a second line role, but sometimes could play third line as well. You get Wayne Simmonds in Buffalo. I know they made an acquisition to get him at the deadline. I'm going to say they're probably going to push to re-sign him, but I'm not really sure what Wayne Simmonds wants to do. Not quite the player he used to be, so I guess we'll have to remain to be seen on that front where he ends up. A couple guys with the Predators will be interesting, including Craig Smith and Mikael Granlund. Obviously, Smith has been there a long time. It'd be hard to see him in another uniform, but at the same time, the Nashville likely was going to be making some changes, and I don't see both of these guys returning. I do think more likely that Granlund would probably move on than Smith, but I guess we will see. Not really clear what's going to happen. It's going to depend, I think, a lot on if they can resume the season and what Nashville is able to do. If they can make any noise in the playoffs, that'll make a big part of their decision here. You get Connor Sherry, who was just recently reacquired by the Penguins. He's going to be a pending free agent. I can see them trying to keep him, but that might prove difficult. You got Ilya Kovalchuk in Washington. Likely goes back to Montreal. At least that's the word on the street right now. You got Justin Williams, longtime veteran in Carolina. Obviously only played less than half a season. Set up the first half of it. Deciding what to do. Decided to come back and play. Will he do that again? Will he want to play? Will he want to retire? Not quite clear for sure, but certainly, they're an interesting name who could be on the retirement list. You got Vladislav Nemestikov, who played for Ottawa, then the Rangers, and then the Avalanche last year. Really had a decent year, I must say. Proved that he can be a versatile guy, play pretty much all forward situations. He can play center as well as the wing. He can just play on the PK. He's very quick. Very solid offensively when given certain roles. So I can see him maybe staying in Colorado. Depends on the contract. But I can also see him moving on. But he will get a fair bit of interest just because I do think he's one of those few guys who can play up and down your lineup and just play special teams. And I think he'll be a little bit more in demand than some of these guys possibly. You get Jesper Fast with the Rangers. Not quite clear if he returns there or not. I know he seems to be a guy who's fit in well nicely there, popular teammate, but they're going to have their fair share of cap struggles with some guys that they need to re-sign here, some of their RFAs especially. So be interesting to see if Fast returns to the Rangers or if he moves on. Let's move on to some bottom six forwards, and these guys are going to get a fair bit of attention because they certainly do play solid roles for at least their existing teams, and I do see most of these guys returning to the NHL. And that includes Kyle Clifford of the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's already been reports that Clifford and the Leafs are both mutually interested in returning to get a new deal done, so I think likely he does stay with the Leafs more than likely. You get Patrick Maroon in Tampa. I guess we'll see what happens if they can get the playoffs going for the NHL, but Pat Maroon's been a guy who's been playing on one-year deals for a while. Be interesting to see if he continues to do that or if he moves on here yet again. He's certainly bounced around but had a lot of success the last couple of years, and that experience he's garnered now is certainly going to gain a lot of attention. The Oilers have a pair of wingers that are going to be somewhat interesting. I could see them maybe returning to Edmonton, but not a given, and that's Tyler Ennis and Gaetan Haas. I think Haas likely does return. Ennis is debatable because they really didn't get a lot of time before the season was suspended to see where he can fit in, but he did have some good games with them. But obviously, if the season can resume, and if depending on how he does, will play a big role whether or not he returns to Edmonton. But right now, it's not quite clear just because he hasn't had the time to showcase it. He certainly will get a contract somewhere for sure. He's played well enough to do that. Corey Perry in Dallas, I don't know, that one-year contract he signed, not a great experiment. He ended up getting suspended. He was injured. I'm not really sure if Dallas is going to want to go down that road again. They very well might shake things up a little bit. I do see a lot of the other veteran guys obviously remaining there, but not sure if Perry comes back. And where does he get another opportunity, or does he? Big question mark. I'm not so sure that he even gets an opportunity, to be honest. You got Josh Levo in Vancouver. Ended the year on injured reserve. Not quite clear how that works out, but the Canucks have a lot of tough decisions to make, and I think that I could see him staying, but I could also see him being let go just because they have so many options and other contracts that might have to take precedence over Levo, but he'll land on his feet somewhere. You get Alex Galchenyuk in Minnesota. Obviously, he's bounced around a bit now, trying to find his way. I'm not sure if Minnesota keeps him around, but he was playing better for the Wild before the season was suspended. After being there for a little bit, he seemed to kind of start to fit in and start to find his way. So we'll see if they give him another opportunity. Then you get Trevor Lewis in Los Angeles. Would have been a great role player on many teams battling for a Stanley Cup. I was surprised he wasn't traded, but certainly I can see him moving on through free agency and getting a role player contract with another team who's contending for the Stanley Cup. And we still have some more bottom six forwards, including Ryan Reeves and Tomas Nosek of the Vegas Golden Knights. Both those guys have been tremendous fits there. It'd be hard pressed to find them going somewhere else, but you never know. Vegas has their share of cap issues, so it's debatable on whether or not either of them return. I do think they would probably both sign shorter term deals. Not a lot of money to remain in Vegas. They're both big parts of that team, but it's hard to say exactly. I can see both of them being in high demand now if they are not retained by the Golden Knights. Ryan Reeves is basically proven to be probably one of the tough guys who can actually play a little bit as well. Nosek's played some really solid, bottom 6 minutes PK for the Golden Knights, and I can see him getting a lot of interest if he's not signed either. You have Matthias Janmark in Dallas Stars organization who's up for grabs, likely moves on. You get Nordstrom in Boston, not really sure he stays there either. You get Patrick Marleau who went on to Pittsburgh, not really sure what happens to Marleau. Many feel he'll go back to San Jose, but I guess it depends on what happens in the playoffs. Can he get that Stanley Cup? Will he continue to chase it? Will he retire? A lot of question marks around Marleau, but certainly another player to keep your eye on. You got Matt Martin to New York Islanders. Not really sure what happens to Martin. I think pretty good odds that he could very well stay with the Islanders on a shorter term, cheaper contract. I don't see there being a ton of interest from him around the league, though, if he is not signed. And then you got a few guys from Buffalo, including guys like Michael Frolik and Jimmy Vesey. They could fill out somebody's roster, but not sure there's going to be a ton of interest really on either player. So that is your full in-depth look at the 2020 NHL Free Agent class. Of course, I'd love to know what your predictions are and where some of these top players are going to end up signing once we finally get to officially be in the NHL offseason and free agency gets underway. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.